Our next speaker is Meryl Dorey. She's already had somewhat of an introduction from Brian there. You know a little bit about her if this is the first time here. And Meryl is the mother of 4 adult children, the eldest of whom was injured by his DPT vaccine in 1989 and later by his MMR vaccine in 1990. This led to many years of research from both within and outside of the mainstream medical literature. In 1994, Meryl joined with a group of health professionals and other families of vaccinated children to found the Australian Vaccination Network. The AVN is dedicated to protecting the rights of all Australians to make free and informed medical decisions without fear of discrimination, financial penalty or bullying. In 1998, the AVN lobbied federal government to enact a conscientious objection clause which until 2016 allowed parents to opt out of vaccination. Meryl and the AVN have vigorously opposed no jab, no pay and no jab, no play, providing submissions and testimony to parliaments at both the Senate and federal levels, and is currently working with individuals and groups around the world to try to return to basic health freedoms to all families everywhere. Thank you. Welcome, Meryl.
Okay, Ta. Thanks very much. That's good. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, good. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you to Brian. Before I go any further, I do have to thank the entire Sydney crew for organizing this amazing event. Every time they do something, they do it well, and they've really done a great job. And also, I have to thank Brian Martin, who in 2009 saved my life, literally, and has been a beacon of light and calm for anyone who's been under attack in Australia. So really and truly an amazing man, and it's a pleasure to follow him. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about him. Okay, this is an unusual topic for me to talk about because normally I come up and talk about vaccinations, problems with vaccines, ineffectiveness issues, but I actually have had quite a bit of hands-on personal experience with censorship in the media, in government, in the medical community. So I started to prepare this talk and I thought, yeah, you know what? This really and truly is something that is very important. And I called my talk Fake News because a few years ago, the government started talking about stopping fake news. And they were all out about, we have to get, clamp down on fake news. We're really in favor of freedom of speech, but this fake news has got to go. And what happened is that this whole term fake news was co-opted by the people who really are in favor of freedom of speech. Because when it comes down to it, what you hear from a lot of government authorities, what you hear in almost every mainstream publication, radio station, television station, and what the mainstream medical authorities are spreading is fake news. And I'm hoping that part of my talk today is going to be showing you how to recognize fake news and seeing what actually happens. So fake news is a form of censorship. That's basically what it is, because they are saying that we cannot listen to this side of a story, we can only listen to this side of a story because this is the truth and everything they're saying is fake. And oops, I probably should have put that up before, sorry. This is a totally unscientific classification. This is how I think of censorship. And I basically break it down into 3 categories. Overt censorship, which is basically when you are told you cannot speak, or there is some form of penalty or punishment if you do speak out. This is what whistleblowers put up with. This is overt censorship. And yes, we do have overt censorship in Australia. Okay, covert censorship is the next category, if you want to call it that. And covert censorship is on social media is probably the best way I can describe it. Have you heard about a phrase called shadow banning? No, okay. This is a very big thing right now. Now, the AVN has several presences on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, and we will put up a post about something. And we think, well, everybody's seeing that because anybody who followed us is able to follow that post. It'll show up on their timeline. Their friends will see it. But what Facebook and a lot of these other social media outlets are doing now is called shadow banning, where they will not share your posts with your friends. It will not show up on their timeline. So you're putting it out there, and I can see it, because we'll put up a post, and usually within 24 hours we'll have 2,000 views. And then we'll put up another post, and within 24 hours we'll have 100 views. And that's not because the post is not interesting. That's because that post has been shadow banned by Facebook. This is a very insidious form of censorship, and it's one that is becoming more and more common. It's quite open. There are algorithms that have been installed in these different platforms to actually do this shadow banning. So it's one of the reasons why the AVN has opened up a page on something called MeWe, which is a Facebook alternative. And we're hoping that it will not be corrupted the way that Facebook was. Okay, and then there is self-censorship, which Brian talked about a little bit. This is where, and a lot of you might have done this. I mean, I've done it. You can say that if you see someone coming down the street who's a friend and they're wearing a dress that looks shocking, you're going to say, "You look fantastic, that's beautiful, never saw you look so good in your life." That's a form of self-censorship. But when it comes to these issues, self-censorship is you see a post about vaccination that you agree with, but you're afraid to share it because you're afraid that you're going to get attacked if you share this. Your brother-in-law is going to say what an idiot you are. Your mother is going to stop talking to you. Your friends from high school are going to unfriend you. So this is self-censorship amongst citizens. There is also self-censorship in the media, where media people who are genuinely on side, and believe it or not, there are media people out there who want to get this story out, but they know that if they tell the truth about vaccinations, they will lose their jobs. And this has happened several times in the past, that people who were very popular and very famous in the media, Megan James from Quantum is one I can think of. She was blacklisted after she did a program on vaccination. And as far as I know, she's never worked in Australia again after 16 years on Quantum. So those are the three basic categories of censorship, according to Meryl. And as I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I have seen a lot of stories that are censored and a lot of examples of censorship. I couldn't possibly put them all in here, but I've put a couple of the older ones in to let you know that not only does this happen, but it's been happening for a long time. In August 1998, the Australian government was planning they actually carried out a measles, mumps, rubella vaccine campaign in the schools. And the AVN tried to take out an injunction to stop that. And we put out press releases because what the government was doing is they were sending out information about the measles vaccine for parents to send to give their children permission to be vaccinated. They listed 5 side effects, mild side effects like swelling at the site, fever. In the package insert, the manufacturer's information, there were 31 side effects, including death, including brain damage. So we said, this information needs to be out there. It's here from the vaccine manufacturer. They didn't make it up, and they're not going to make up bad things about their own product. So we put out a press release about that information, and the media actually picked it up. So what happened was Dr. Kathy Mead, now she didn't send us a copy of this. We got this because someone in one of the media outlets actually sent it to us. She sent a letter to, as far as I know, all the media outlets in Australia, and she also sent this letter to schools because schools were sending our information home to parents along with the information from the government so that they could make a choice. And she basically warned the media outlets that if they reported anything that the AVN said, that children would die and they would be responsible. She said that claims that vaccines cause these diseases and conditions, meaning the side effects that are listed in the package insert, are misinformed at best and blatant scaremongering at worst. She also said there can be no suggestion that the Commonwealth government has distorted the facts or withheld information. Well, there was no suggestion. There was proof, positive, that they did that. And she also said that readers need to know that measles is not a trivial disease. And from 1978 to 1992, 164 Australian people died from measles. Now, I am not minimizing deaths from measles, because deaths from any condition is a tragedy. But at that time, 300 children were dying a year from asthma. And asthma was strongly linked with vaccination. And I didn't see that sort of care or concern about asthma deaths as I did from measles. This is a fantastic article. I only have the abstract from it. This is a woman named Brooks McTavish, and I've since contacted her and asked her to send me the data, and I hope she will. She wrote a thesis for her master's degree from the University of Sydney. Excuse me. And in that, she discussed Carl Scully, who was an MP in the New South Wales Parliament. Now, how many of you have heard of Carl Scully? I think, yeah. He was the Minister for Transport well after this, but he spent an entire year's political income or salary, or whatever you call it, writing a quite a good publication called Immunization, Is It Worth the Risk? Now, I have that on my Scribed page if anybody wants to download it. And what happened is when he brought that out, the media contacted him and wanted to find out why he was questioning vaccinations. Why was he concerned? And he said that Graham Richardson, who at that time was the federal health minister, should put together an independent inquiry into vaccination. And that same journalist contacted Senator Richardson and said, what do you think about this? And Senator Richardson replied that he had told Scully never to say anything like that again if he knew what was good for him. And the very next day, Carl Scully retracted his comments. So this is censorship. This is someone who spent an entire year researching and publishing on this issue. And when he tried to communicate his concerns, he was told to shut up. I'm not going to go into this very much because Brian's already covered it very well. I call it death by 1,000 government inquiries. Since 2009, the AVN has been subject to 15 different government inquiries at a cost to the public purse of millions of dollars. We've been audited. We were forced to change our name, as Brian said. Members of our committee have been subject to threats and all sorts of harassment. And Greens leader, Dr. Richard DiNatale, who I think Elizabeth spoke about before, not one of my favorite people in the world, he actually passed a resolution in the Senate calling for the AVN to disband. And during his speech on that resolution, he publicly thanked members of the Australian Skeptics and Stop the AVN, including one who had issued death threats against me and against whom I had an apprehended violence order at the time, that he thanked him for his hard work on this issue. Okay, and I'm just going to even pass through this slide because it'll give me more time, but this is all about how the Savin, Friends of Science in Medicine, and the Australian Skeptics have tried to block our seminars and have been successful in blocking them sometimes, which is why we always have seminars like this now. How many of you here, and probably most of you, have heard of the CDC whistleblower, Dr. William Thompson? Yep, almost everyone. That's the shot silenced around the world. Dr. Thompson was exposed as a whistleblower. He did not voluntarily come forward. He was exposed in 2014 in August. And at that time, I heard about it. And I said to my husband, this is it, the game is up. It's all over, because this information is now going to come out and vaccinations will be exposed for what they really are. Because Dr. Thompson's study in 2004, he was one of 5 authors of this study, the DiStefano study, and the data was altered to make it appear that vaccines were not related to autism. But the actual data in the study showed that the increased risk of autism in children who were vaccinated was as much as 7 times higher. Now, right now, 1 child in 30 in Australia, according to the Autism Association, is autistic. That's from 1 in 10,000 30 years ago. So we have a real tragedy. We have a disaster on our hands. And I thought for sure that the media was going to report this, but they didn't. In September of that year, we sent out a media release, we being the AVN, to over 1,000 media outlets, and we had references. I've just put a few of them here. We did not get one media person contacting us for comment or reporting on it. The only response we got out of that 1,000 was one ABC radio journalist who sent us back a one-word reply, deleted. That was it. So they have the power to inform the public, or alternatively, they have the power to cover up what is being done to the public. And they have chosen to cover up what is being done to the public. And I think they have no conscience. They have no morals. And until they start taking their job as the Fourth Estate seriously, we will never be able to say that we're getting truth in any way, shape, or form from the media. Now, Brian's already talked about Sherry Tenpenny and Polly Tommy's being banned. She was actually banned under terrorism legislation. They said, the Minister for Immigration said that her presence was a threat to the good order of Australia. After she'd been here for 2 weeks on an amazing tour where we had sold out venues and not one problem. So I'd say that the minister actually meant to say that she was a threat to the good order of the pharmaceutical industry, who donates lots of money to Australian politicians. And sometimes the people don't even have to come to Australia to get banned. This is Kent Heckenlively. He writes for the Bolin Report. He is a solicitor in the United States, and he also has an adult, severely autistic child. He wrote a blog post, totally tongue-in-cheek, saying that he wanted to come to Australia to discuss this issue with Malcolm Turnbull. He would love to meet him at the lodge. He would buy him lunch, all of this stuff. There was panic after he wrote that blog post. And without him even applying for a visa, he was banned. There was headlines in the newspaper, we cannot allow this anti-vaxxer into Australia, he must be banned. He had no intention of coming to Australia. But the fact that they banned him shows how scared they are. This is a quote that I just love from Voltaire. I really like Voltaire. If you haven't read him, he's well worth it. To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize. We don't have a government. We don't have politicians. They're not the ones pulling the strings. The corporate interests are the ones pulling the strings. We hold elections. We vote people in or vote people out, but it doesn't really matter who's there. It really doesn't. Because whoever is there, it's going to be exactly the same. And we have to get this through our heads. Now, I'm going to try this next slide. I'm not sure if it's going to work. Help.
Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about plaguing our country.
Plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 You know what? This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This. Because this is what the media is. They're a bunch of parrots. They've been told what to say and they repeat it back. Polly want a cracker? Polly want a vaccine. This information or misinformation is one of the big issues facing Australia today and facing the world, because it's not just Australia, that's the United States. One of the excuses, and I love that clip, I really love it, because anybody who sees that, they're going to have to start thinking, wait a minute, they're all saying exactly the same thing, even in the same way. The false balance. Have you guys heard about false balance? Because I was a bit shocked the first time that I was told by an ABC journalist that they couldn't possibly report anything that the AVN said because that would be false balance. This is a definition of false balance that I got off the internet. It's a media bias in which journalists present an issue as being more balanced between opposing viewpoints than the evidence supports. Now, translated into English, because I know that's not very clear, it basically means that the media has decided that there is validity on one side of an issue and no validity on the other side. Therefore, reporting the other side of that issue would be false balance, because it's like saying the earth is flat. I mean, there are some people who think the earth is flat, but most people don't think the earth is flat. So if you report that the earth is flat, that is false balance. Of course, what I say is, let us talk about whether the earth is flat or not. And if it's a ridiculous supposition, people are smart enough to figure that out for themselves. What the media is doing is they are becoming the arbiter for what we can and cannot know, because they think we're really stupid. They think we are too dumb to figure out what's true and what's not. So I say that there is no such thing as false balance, but there certainly is such a thing as fake news. This is a sign of bias in the media. This was the March for Science. They had about 3,000 people across Australia marching to support science. That's like holding a telethon for the biggest, richest companies in the world. This was headline news in just about every newspaper, radio station, and television station. This is a no jab, no pay rally. We had over 1,000 people there, and the rallies were held in every capital city. I'd say there were 6,000 or 7,000 people rallying. Not one media outlet covered that, not one. So you have to understand that people unless they are open to this or someone actually exposes them to it, they're not even going to know that there's a question. And that's why we have to take responsibility for being the media, because the media is not being the media. They are not reporting fairly. This is Facebook. I've copied this off of my own Facebook page. The top thing says, content unavailable in Australia. You're unable to view this content because local laws restrict our ability to show it. If you'd like more information, please see our help center. And of course, the help center gives you no help whatsoever. So the Australian government has decided that we are entitled to see some things and not other things. So this is another step past shadow banning. This is overt censorship. This is Facebook deciding, and it's not just Facebook, it's many other places, deciding that something is not supposed to be accessible to us. And the screenshot underneath, Facebook page deleted. This page isn't available. Dozens and dozens of vaccine-critical pages have been deleted in just the last month. And it's not just vaccine-critical pages, it is any page that criticizes government policy. Now, I don't know, and I have not read enough about this myself, but just in the last few days, I've been told that there is new legislation that was passed in Australia. It's espionage legislation, and it will criminalize whistleblowers. It will criminalize people who criticize the government with 25-year prison sentences, with huge fines. I don't know enough about it yet, and I am going to be checking into it. But I have to tell you that if they think they're going to be silencing me or anyone else at the AVN, they've got another thing coming. Thank you. I moved to a democracy. I moved to a country without a Bill of Rights. But we have a guaranteed right of freedom of political speech in this country. And if somebody wants to try and take that away, they're going to have a fight on their hands. And this is that billboard in WA that's already been covered. These are just a few of the headlines in newspapers about that billboard. Western Australian government calls for Perth anti-vax billboard to be pulled down after doctors complain. Well, goodness gracious, we have a group of people who are making a fortune off of vaccinating you and you not knowing what's in a vaccine. Of course they're going to complain. If Ford complained that Holden was getting too many sales, would the government take down a billboard for a Holden? I don't think so. Health Minister moves to ban cunning and devious anti-vax billboard. All the billboard said is, do you know what's in a vaccine? What is cunning and devious about that? AMA slams billboard. Well, there you go again. It's a lobby group, a pharmaceutical lobby group, and a doctor's lobby group that is slamming something that may have an effect on their profitability. Western Australian minister riled by anti-vax billboard. Oh, I'm so sad. How do we rile them? Controversial anti-vaxxer billboard calling parents to research vaccines, in quotes, is defaced by vandals as politicians push for the sign to be taken down, and it was taken down. They took it down saying they were going to clean it, but then they never put it back up again. Surprise, surprise. Oops. And this is the AVN's billboard. This has been up in Queensland for 6 months now. And we have, thank you. That is Tasha David. Tasha is the president of the AVN. She has 6 vaccine-injured children. And the things that people at Stop the AVN and the Friends of Science in Medicine and the Australian Skeptics have said about her do not bear repeating. This is someone who did the right thing. She vaccinated her children, and she paid the price, and her children paid the price. And what this billboard said is, one day, everyone will know the truth about vaccines, because Tasha did not know the truth when she agreed to vaccinate, and I did not know the truth when I agreed to vaccinate. And that is a wrong thing. That is absolutely wrong. So, in conclusion, I'm going to say to you, turn off your TVs, shut them down. I don't even have regular TV. I just watch Netflix. I'm sorry, I have to watch something like that when I knit. Switch off your radios, because they're just lying to you. Throw away the newspaper. Don't give them any money. Don't support them. Don't support their advertisers. Support alternative media. Here is a list of the AVN's outlets, but there are hundreds, literally hundreds, of non-mainstream news outlets. ANR is one. Jamie was just here before speaking about that, the Australian National Review. Find an outlet that is not being paid to lie to you, and follow them and support them, and do whatever you need to do to share that information with other people. Do not allow yourself to feel that you have to be censored. Because I've got to tell you, if you had told me 24 years ago when I started the AVN that things would have gotten as bad as they are now, I would have said you were lying. But I can tell you one thing. If we do not unite, if we do not find our courage and become brave about this issue, we haven't got a future, and neither have our children. So thank you very much.